Good afternoon, everybody. Chris McDonald, Mac Files number 11, broadcasting today from Southeast Alabama. Today is Thursday, September the 21st, 2016, just 47 days away from the 2016 presidential election, just 5 days away from the first debate between Donald J. Trump and Hillary Clinton as we draw closer to the time that we elect the next president of the country. We're so glad to have you today on the Mac Files. We've got a lot to talk about today. I want to just apologize a little bit for the lengthiness of yesterday's broadcast. We went close to an hour and didn't really mean to. We're trying to keep these about a half hour, maybe 40 minutes, but we felt really strongly pressed, I felt like, to play Mr. Harris's video there at the end and let you hear the audio of a stinging rebuke from a black individual, an African American, of President Obama's last 8 years in office. And I think what he said was well worth the extra 10 minutes that our broadcast went yesterday, and I hope you enjoyed that. If you've not heard it, check our link out on the number 10. We were talking about Charleston last night. We're going to talk about Charleston again today. The White House has weighed in on that, and what they said was typical Obama speak. And it's just part of the reason why the racial tensions in this country are continuing to be stoked is tied into the comments that the White House made today about what happened in Charlotte. And it's just a fundamental difference in the way the White House sees our nation and how most American people see our nation. And this is never going to be reconciled. I mean, to be frank with you, we've got 3 months before this divisive and most anti-American administration I think we have ever had in the history of the presidencies. And we've had some bad ones, folks. I mean, there's not every president that this nation has had has been good. And I say that in the sense that all presidents have made mistakes. There's not been one that we've had since George Washington that has been perfect. George Washington wasn't perfect. But I don't think we've ever had a more divisive, anti-American, anti-Christian, anti-everything, traditional value president like we embraced for 8 years in Barack Obama. I didn't embrace him. I didn't vote for him, but I know a lot of people did. And a lot of people are duped or were duped back in 2008, and then they were duped again in 2012. And a lot of that had to do with the media. But I don't blame the media for all of it because, folks, the people we have to blame for that situation in 2012, if you get a mirror and you look in it, that's the problem. We all need to look in that mirror. We're the reason that he got back in office. And we have nobody to blame but ourselves. America always elects the leaders that best represents its values, and that's a dangerous thing to say, but it's really true. And I just hope that in this election season, as we are nearing this election, that we take a good hard look at who we're going to elect. I've got no reason to be ashamed of telling you I'm on the Trump train. I've been on the Trump train really from the beginning. I get a little wired up about it with some folks. They get more worried about what Donald Trump says instead of being concerned about what Hillary Clinton has done. And Trump has not been in the public office ever. He's been a businessman for 20 to 25 years. He's not been in any public office. He's never ran for public office. And both the Republicans and the Democrats who judge him so harshly about not being that candidate or that, typical conservative or a typical Republican or a typical presidential candidate, they miss the point. We, the American people, we're sick of politicians. We're sick of by-the-book Republicans. We're sick of crooked Democrats. And we're sick of politicians that say one thing and do another. We're sick of being sold down the toilet with trade agreements that are killing our jobs. We're sick. And, if the Republican establishment doesn't want to get behind Trump, it's okay. We will remember you. And, I think George H.W. Bush came out a couple of days ago, at least it was reported on Instagram, it was reported in Twitter, and a few other websites picked it up that he told somebody privately that he was voting for Hillary Clinton. And, I want to say this, and this is not what I came on here to talk about today, but I will mention this. I have a lot of respect for George W. Bush. I had a lot of respect for him and the way he handled our country after 9/11. Of course, he didn't show up at the Republican convention. Jeb didn't, and his daddy didn't either. But if this is the way the Bushes want to play their cards, let them play it. I don't think the people out here in the country really give two bit pins less what the Bushes think of Donald Trump, because Jeb turned out to be nothing but a crybaby. He got on that stage trying to force Trump into agreeing to support whoever the Republican nominee was. Trump said sure. But the Bushes thought that the country was just so ready to put their arms around Jeb again and put their arms around Hillary, and we wind up with the Clinton-Bush presidency again. And folks, we're sick of the Bushes. We're sick of the Clintons. And I think the country is sick. And when you get a sick electorate, I don't think they care what anybody says about the situation. And I'm going to mention one quick thing, and then I'm going to get off politics and get on to my subject for today. It's amazing to me how many times Donald Trump in this election cycle, both during the primaries and especially during this general election, has been called racist. And I want to give you something to think about this afternoon. In 20 years of being a businessman, Donald Trump has never, ever, ever been called racist or bigoted or misogynist or any of the things, or sexist for that matter. In all these years of him doing business and doing business deals with nations, other nations of the world, many corporations in this country, you never heard anything about Donald Trump. Donald Trump wasn't perfect in his past. None of us are. But all of these excoriating comments that are coming down the pike right now, and people calling him racist and bigot. The only time that label started being hurled at him was when he started running against the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton. So you think about that, and when you hear all those terms, I think most people have just blown it off and they said, we've heard it so much, it's BS anyway, we don't even believe it. Because the people that are going to vote for Hillary are going to vote for her no matter what she calls Donald Trump and what she don't. And the people that are going to vote for Trump, it doesn't matter what they call him anymore. They're in the back. The thing that's happening right now in these polls. Poll came out yesterday. There's been a shift. He's up in North Carolina now. He's up in Ohio by almost 7 points. But Nevada, which was basically a Clinton given that she was going to win that state, Nevada, she was up by 12 to 15 points just a month ago. And Donald Trump came out yesterday, he's up by 3. And there's something happening in the electorate right now. There's an earthquake being felt. And, I don't know what the end result's going to be. Hillary may ultimately win this thing. I don't know. But I will tell you this. I think the people in America are piss poor tired of these career politicians, of which she is one. And when George H.W. Bush comes out and he, says, well, I'm going to vote for Hillary, honestly, the people in America don't care about that. Let the Bushes vote for who they want to. They're part of the reason this country's in the mess we're in right now. And I respect George W. Bush. I think he did a great job after 9/11. I agreed in principle with the reason why he went into Iraq. Granted, I know it was bad intelligence, but where me and him will always be in disagreement about, and where he messed this country up, and we've not been the same since. And Donald Trump is right in saying that when we went into Iraq in 2003 and we didn't handle it right, we destabilized that region. And then Obama exacerbated the situation when he came in and he pulled us out so quickly. And that vacuum that took place in Iraq basically created ISIS, which we're going to talk a little bit about today, because something happened in the last few days over there of tremendous importance. And with the chemical weapon that was found and some of the weapons that were being fired at our troops, some of that turned out to be laced with mustard gas. And that is a very troubling turn of events, because if they're getting their hands on chemical weapons, then it's only a matter of time that those weapons may find themselves here to America. And while I respect the Bushes, I don't care what they say anymore, because they're out. And, I saw a meme here a few weeks ago. It says, we're tired of your families. There was a picture of Jeb and there was a picture of Hillary. We dispatched one of those families in the primaries, and it's time to dispatch the other one during the general election, because we are sick of seeing Clintons and Bushes on these presidential tickets. It's time for a change. And folks, Donald Trump may turn out to be the best president we've ever had. He could turn out to be the worst president we ever had. I don't think it's going to be either or. I think he's going to be somewhere in the middle. This man is smart in the sense when he don't know something, he's smart enough to go get information and get help from other people that do. And at least he's humble enough to recognize that. We got a president now that is so arrogant, he's never done that. He has driven this country off the ditch, trying to push his ideology on the populace for nearly 8 years now, and it has basically succeeded because our nation is in such a mess. People don't know left from right, night and day. And when you see these pictures of what went on in Charlotte, North Carolina last night, of these thugs and these criminals, and I'm not talking about Mr. Sutton, the guy that got shot. I'm talking about the people rioting. They are just as bad and just as wicked as anything that Mr. Sutton was accused of doing by the police. And we're going to talk about that here in just a second. But I'm just saying today, the electric is ready for a change. And Mr. Trump, I think, has got what it takes to do the job. Now, again, nobody knows the future, but the polls are showing that the American people are getting it, and I think the American people are understanding what's at stake and who really is best suited to run this country. You cannot be as corrupt as Hillary Clinton, and people embrace that corruption, because to embrace that type of corruption is basically putting a death sentence on our nation. And I'll just leave it at that. We'll talk about that more as we draw near to the debates Monday night. But that's just your Thursday afternoon thought about the election where it stands right now. It is Thursday, September the 21st. I want to talk about something that I sort of started on yesterday and I want to go back to. And it's been something that has really disturbed me for a while. And there's very, very little reporting going on in it about the media. Back in December of 2015, there was an article that came out on the Washington Post that I'm going to be referencing here. And I want to go back to the issue that we talked about yesterday about the Syrian refugees and the disproportionate number of refugees that are being led into our country from Syria and other parts of that world over there where the Muslims are predominantly in power, and where Islam controls a great deal of those lands. And there is such a indifference of this administration to the persecution of Christians in those regions of the world. And where Obama basically has got his hands wide open to immigration of Muslims from that region, his administration has been actively working against Christian immigration from those same regions of the world. I'm going to read you a little bit of this article. And I just want you to listen to this, some of the stats that I give you, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to discuss this a little bit, and then we're going to talk about Charlotte as we wrap it up today. The official and public indifference to the continued persecution and murder of Christians in the Middle East is a scandal, according to this Washington Times report, and it's rightly stating it just as such. It is a scandal of enormous proportions. The mainstream media has said zilch about this problem. Nothing. Only a few internet websites are devoted to the rescue of persecuted Christians. The media, like the president, is blind to the outrage. And there's a reason why he's blind to that, and I'll get to that in a minute. Expressions of concern by the leaders of the West are very few. The fact is that Christians face more persecution in far more countries than any other religious group, including Muslims, who actually live in Muslim countries. U.S. Christian sources estimate that 180 Christians are killed in 60 countries monthly, and I think that figure is very low. There's probably more than that are killed, merely for their faith. Many of these are in maniacal environments, such as the North Korea area, but there are incidents in also areas of the world, such as India, such as Pakistan, which is heavily Muslim, Syria, Iran, Iraq, and a number of other growing countries in the Middle East that oppose Christian evangelization and work exclusively hard to remove the Christian element from their existence. This has been seen in the crucifixions, the beheadings, the stabbings, the burning alive of Christians by ISIS in the last 2 to 3 years since ISIS has come to power. Now, the article goes on to say this, and this is something that's interesting. President Obama has opposed legislation which would fast-track Christian refugees, despite the fact that nearly a third of Syria's Christians, which total about 600,000 of them, have fled persecution by Al-Qaeda and ISIS, sometimes called ISIL. The Obama administration is eager, according to this article. And look, the Washington Times, folks, is not the most conservative of newspapers. The Obama administration, according to this article, is eager to avoid offending or provoking ISIS. Saving Christians might be regarded as involved in the clash of civilizations. Mr. Obama has been deeply concerned since he became the president about Islamophobia and antagonism toward American Muslims and the worldwide Islamic community. But the persecution of Christians, don't care about. He don't care about. I remember him speaking back a few months ago about this whole Syrian refugee crisis, and not one time when he was talking about the persecution of people and the families that are fleeing that region of the world, not one time during that speech did he mention Christians fleeing from that area. It was all about the Muslims. This article, though, ties some of this back to the presidency of George W. Bush. And this is what it says about that. And this is interesting. It says Condi Rice, who was Bush's former Secretary of State, she basically said that the administration under Bush did not want to get into sectarian issues. And that's why they did not push the immigration of Christians coming into this country either. And there was refugee aid back in that time, right as Bush was going out of office, that approached the White House and said, look, we got a problem. We got Christians being persecuted all over the world. And that's what Condi Rice said. She said, we don't intervene in sectarian issues. Folks, when people are being beheaded and murdered and poured gasoline on and burned alive, when babies are being ripped out of their mother's arms, when women are being raped in public, when people are being crucified and put on crosses and beheaded, and men having their heads cut off on YouTube videos in public, I would say, Mrs. Rice, no disrespect intended, that's a little bit more than a sectarian issue. That's a little bit more than a sectarian issue. But that's where the source of this began, and it has just been exasperated and again increased quite a bit during the Obama administration. This is the funny part, and this is what the article points out, and this is really the thing that is just blows you away. Christians actually in the Middle East were treated more sympathetically under Saddam Hussein in Iraq. And since ISIS has come on the scene and controlled much of that region of the world now, especially the northeast part of Syria, there is no sympathy toward Christians. It is all-out war on Christians in the Middle East. I read an article in Christianity Today not too long ago. It was on one of their websites, and the writer basically said that if something don't change quickly, there will be no Christian presence in the Middle East in 10 years. That's how bad this is getting. It's like a Holocaust going on of Christians in the Middle East, similar to what took place in World War II under Hitler and the Jews. But Christians are under attack, and this administration has done absolutely nothing to help them, while basically lecturing the United States, and that's what Obama did at the UN back on Monday. He got up, he lectured the country and said, well, we're inhumane if we don't take all these Syrian refugees in and we don't take all these people in. We're being humane. Well, Mr. Obama, I ask you a question. Where's your humanity when it comes to the Christians that are being persecuted? There is none. There is none. ISIS, again, they beheaded many Christians. And all of this time, since this began about 3 years ago, there has only been one time that Mr. Obama basically has even referenced the Christian persecution by ISIS. And that was about 3 years ago in a speech that he was given to a group of pastors. And he mentioned in passing, and that's all he said about it. Didn't say that the country was going to do anything about it, and he didn't really care so much about it. Let me just tell you this, neighbor. The fear of offending Muslims and the fear of Islamophobia and the fear of ISIS getting a little offended, are you kidding me? That is no excuse, none, for allowing Christians in the Middle East to be beheaded, to be crucified, to be killed, and to be slaughtered by this group. And us as an American civilized nation turning a blind eye to their plight. And this podcast today, I know I'm just a little voice crying in the wilderness. I'm not a big name dude, but today I'm bringing attention to it. And I pray that you share this video with others because it needs to get out what's happening both in America and in our government. When you save a Christian from religious thugs and killers, that's far more worthy than any human rights cause trying to save an animal. But we have gotten to the point that we're more concerned about the blood of animals, and we're more concerned, like groups of PETA walking around with their signs worried about we're killing some skunk instead of dealing and saving human life. And I'm going to say a few things that's going to sound a little bit nasty. It's going to sound a little mean. But this nation is not an Islamic nation. This nation was not built on the principles of Islam. This nation was not built on the teachings of Allah. This nation was not built on the teachings of the Quran. This nation was not built on the principle of in Allah we trust. This nation was not built with the premise when we formed this nation with the blood of thousands in the Revolutionary War. Our forefathers did not lay their hand on the Quran and promise God that this country would turn into an Islamic haven for terrorists. They did not do that. This nation was founded on the Bible. This nation was founded on the principle that it would be God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that we would follow. This country was built on the idea that it was God we trusted, not Allah. And when Mr. Obama gets on television and he says that we have Muslims to thank for the success of America, that's just flat wrong. And that's coming from a man who, people all the time in all these 8 years have asked the question, is he Muslim? Is he really a Muslim himself? And I said something last week about it, and I'll say the very same thing I said last week. Folks, at this point, it don't matter. We've let him in the hen house. He's been here 8 years, and he has instilled this feeling into the country, and he's opening the door to all these Muslim refugees. Why do you think he's doing that? Do you think that he really cares about the what will come of this? He wants America to become a Muslim nation. And I'll say it like this: whether he is a Muslim or not a Muslim, it don't matter. He acts like one. And he's sympathetic to their causes. And he's not sympathetic to the Christian causes. And look, I don't think that we need to be inhumane to any group. We're not advocating violence against Muslims. We're not advocating anything like that. We're not advocating any kind of bias or bigotry or anything toward any group. But what we are saying, that the disproportionate number of Muslim refugees that he's pushing to come into this country is far less than those of Christians. And he's actively working against Congress passing laws that would help Christians come into this nation. Folks, that's wrong. That's wrong. And I'm going to go ahead and take a step further. You may or may not agree with this. God's not pleased with that. God is not pleased with that. But you got a leader that's doing it. And as we go forward, we got two candidates that are basically telling us two different things right now. We got one telling us we need to stop all this, that we need to take a step back. We need to look at who these people are coming in. We need to vet them. If we can't vet them, we keep them out. You got another one that says open the door, open the floodgates, let them all come in with no vetting. And then she got on television. I'll change that a little bit. She did yesterday take Donald Trump's words out of his mouth and act like she's been wanting to vet all of them all along. That's a lie, folks. Hillary Clinton has been promising to make a 500% increase in immigration of these Syrian refugees if she gets elected. And yesterday, she sounded like some tough commander-in-chief that, no, we need to vet them. I can promise you I'm going to vet these people. That is a bowl of crap coming out of her mouth, which she's used to doing. If Hillary Clinton told you that the sky was blue, I would suggest you go outside and look up and make sure it is. Because she's not going to do that. She's not going to vet these people. She's told us she's going to make it a 500% increase in them. This is a very serious issue. And I don't want to get into all the figures of Christian persecution. We'll save that for another day because I got more to talk about today. But I will tell you this. It's an issue that needs to be addressed. And you've got two distinct differences of opinion on this immigration issue. And people are slamming Trump about this wall at the southern border. But folks, that wall is the least of our worries right now. That wall is the least of our worries. If we don't get a handle on these refugees that are coming in from these countries that are ripe with Islamic terrorism and that are ripe with people with ideologies that want to destroy America and do the very things that ISIS wants to do. And with the advent of this news story today that ISIS was sending bombs and the things that they were shooting at our troops in Iraq just in the last few days was laced with mustard gas, I think the stakes have just went up tremendously. And I think it behooves us to make triply sure that these people that are coming in here are not dangerous people. And I don't know if we can do that. And I think the best thing to do is to put a stop to it altogether until we can. And if we can't, then you turn to the Arab world and say, look, you all have got to help. Donald Trump has proposed safe zones over there in the Middle East. I see nothing wrong with that. But his critics want to call him bigoted and uncaring, unloving, and as Obama claimed Monday, all those that believe that were just inhumane. But I ask again the question today, where's his humanity when it comes to persecuted Christians? It's zero. It's zero. And that's a dangerous, dangerous precedent that he's setting. And it's something you need to be concerned about. It's something you need to stay on top of. And we're going to stay on top of it here at the Mac Files. All right, let's talk about Charlotte last night. As many of you know, there has been more violence overnight. As I left you last night, there was a tremendous, just an absolute terrible rioting, terrible things that were done to cars. In fact, it was reported just a few hours ago that the NASCAR Hall of Fame building was actually damaged from these riots in Charlotte last night. The police basically said that the gentleman, Mr. Scott, had a gun. We reported last night that he pointed the gun at police. We're going to go ahead and clarify that a little bit. It's unclear whether he pointed the gun, but he was holding the gun. They told him to drop the gun, and he didn't do that. And that's when he got shot. And unfortunately, he lost his life. And, you know, I discussed that last night. I don't want to get into that, but I want to talk about these protesters. These protesters, folks, need to be dealt with and need to be dealt with harshly by police. The governor of North Carolina called in the National Guard last night, and they should be in force tonight in Charlotte. So I don't know what that's going to mean. I heard Rudy Giuliani say this morning that if the Charlotte police don't get this under control tonight, they may lose the city. Because if they can't control protesters, then you have no barrier between anarchy and people that are just law-abiding citizens, and even people in their homes sitting at home. This could triple over into residential areas. You could have a Los Angeles real quick. And I'm not saying that it's going to get that bad, but if the police don't clamp down and do something, it will get that bad. And there is no justification, zilch, none, for rioting and doing the things that these thugs and these criminals and these punk kids, these punk-ass kids, and I would use another word, I wish I could use them, but I can't. But these kids and these men and these women, and it wasn't just black folks doing it, there were plenty of whites doing it too. But they're all criminals. They're all still criminals. But I want to tell you what the White House had to say about it today, because it blows you away when you listen to the Barack Obama. They asked Josh Earnest about it, and this is what they said. They said the White House said Thursday, I'm reading this off the Washington Times news site, said Thursday that protesters angered by the fatal police shooting of a black man in Charlotte, North Carolina. And according to the White House, they're raising legitimate concerns about racial disparities in the criminal justice system. Josh Earnest said, quote, "Those are difficult questions that must be confronted. They cannot be ignored." And Mr. Earnest said the president wants authorities to ensure the safety of the protesters. Josh, let me just give you a little word of wisdom from somebody out here watching this crap last night on television. Those are not protesters, Josh. when you're burning cars, when you're looting buildings, when you're throwing rocks off bridges, when you're shouting obscenities to police and pelting police with rockets and hand grenades and firecrackers, and you're sitting there doing the things that most people would go to jail for, that is not a protest. That is a thug mentality that needs to be dealt with. And because of the crap coming from the White House like that, that gives these people a heads up. Hey, it's okay. Let's burn Charlotte down, baby. Because we got legitimate concerns that a black man was shot last night. No matter that that black man had a gun in his hand, whether he was pointing that gun or not at the cops, folks, it don't matter. They told him to put it down. He didn't, and he brought the shooting on himself. In addition, it wasn't a white cop that shot him. It was a black police officer. He had been relatively new to the force, but he followed protocol. He followed procedure. If he would not have shot the man, and the man would have pulled the gun and killed him and maybe his fellow officers, then it would be too late. I have no sympathy, zilch for Mr. Scott. You point a gun, you hold a gun, the cops shoot you down, you get what you deserve. I feel for his family in the sense, I know they've got a loss today. That young man that was on that video, all over Facebook, calling white people blanking devils and white police officers blanking devils. He's got the race wrong, honey. It wasn't white police officers that did this last night. It wasn't white people that did this. It was your brother. He brought this on himself, not white people, not white police officers. It infuriates me when the White House does this. It just infuriates me. This racial disparity about shooting black people. I don't have the figures today. I wished I would, but I don't have it. But I'm telling you, there is nothing more wrong and nothing more wicked and not anything that's more deceitful and dishonest than when the White House, Hillary Clinton, or any of the Democratic ilk tell you there's racial disparity in shootings. Folks, the facts and figures say that more white people are shot by cops every year than blacks. And the ones that are shot, 99% of those that are shot are usually engaged in criminal behavior. Now, there are exceptions to that rule. I just heard just a few minutes ago, just crossed the wire here as we follow the wires in the afternoon, that the police officer in Tulsa that shot Terrence Crutcher 2 nights ago, she's been charged with manslaughter. She's been charged with manslaughter. I believe that is the right course of action. But let me tell you the difference between Tulsa and Charlotte. There wasn't any rioting in Tulsa. Whites didn't get out and burn buildings. Black people didn't do that. People in Tulsa acted humanely, and they acted like civilized people do. They waited for the legal process to take its course. The lady got charged. She should get charged for what I saw in that video. I'm all believing that that's what you should do if you shoot a man without cause. And deep down in my heart, the second I saw it, unless there was something in that car, unless there was proof that he was pulling for a gun, what happened today needed to happen. And I don't have any really feeling that it's anything that was done wrong by the justice system. I think that's the appropriate response to that. Charlotte's a different story. Yet Charlotte's the city that's paying the price for this. And we're approaching 5 o'clock in the east this afternoon, and we're a few hours from sunset, and God knows what's going to happen tonight in Charlotte. The Black Caucus today shamed themselves with a freedom walk in Washington, D.C., again, to bring attention, as they said, to the shooting of black people by white cops. And folks, this racial division, this racial dishonesty is what's driving America into the ground, and it will destroy us eventually. There's no white America. There's no black America. These figures, this throwing these things out like that is a false narrative. It goes back to Ferguson. It goes back to every city that you look at in the past. It goes back to every rioting. We've had a rough year. We've had a rough summer. We've had a rough probably 18 months of this stuff. We've had cops getting shot to death in Baton Rouge. We've had cops getting shot to death in Dallas. There have been incidents all throughout the summer. Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, all over the country where cops have been targeted and shot. Just recently in Arizona, some idiot got in a car, ran a car into 3 police officers hoping he could kill them. It's amazing the White House has zilch to say about that. But they can get on their soapbox today and their stupidity, which it is stupidity, and say that the protesters have legitimate complaints. That's not protesting what went on in Charlotte last night. That was thuggery and criminal behavior. And when the White House says stuff like that, they are giving their okay to criminal behavior. There's nobody in this land that says you can't protest peacefully. There's nobody that will stop a peaceful protest. Rudy Giuliani said it best this morning. When he was mayor of New York and there was things like this that came up, he told the people that protested in his city, as long as you keep it peaceful, you will have no problem for me. But the second that you start rioting, we're going to come down on you like bricks. And very, very, very few tested Rudy Giuliani, because they knew what kind of man he was. They knew what kind of leader he was. But the White House give their heads up today to another night of violence in Charlotte. You mark my word. There was an incident last night where one of the gentlemen that was protesting got shot by a fellow protester, or if you want to call him that, a thug. He's on life support today. There was a reporter of CNN. Video came out that these thugs, or let me change that. These protesters, as the White House called them, was dragging a man into a bonfire, trying to put him on fire because he was reporting. I guess they have a legitimate complaint to do that, Mr. Ernest. I guess they have a legitimate reason to drag a man into a bonfire. Folks, we got a problem in this nation. We've got a serious problem, and these problems are not going away. And our prayers go out tonight to Charlotte, North Carolina. Our prayers go out tonight to these police officers who are going to be, again, putting their life on the line, probably facing another night of rioting, facing another night of rock throwing, another night of thug action, probably facing another night where possibly some of them may not come home to their families. And again, you've got a White House that just tipped their hat to these thugs. And they said, you got legitimate complaints. Now you ask yourself the question, is that right? It's not right. It's not right. It's hideously evil. I'm going to say this. I got about 6 minutes left, and I'm going to use all 6 of them. It's been said many times that Barack Obama is stupid. I heard that from the right a lot. I heard that a lot from people that don't like him, that he's just stupid. Folks, Barack Obama's not stupid. We make the mistake of thinking in this country that Barack Obama and his ilk and his minions, including Hillary Clinton, are stupid. We make a tragic mistake in that. They're not stupid. There's a difference in being stupid and being evil. And what we're witnessing here is evil in charge of our nation. Excuse me, Eddie Hart, for rocking back and forth. Eddie says I rock back and forth too much. I love Eddie. He's a good friend. I'm trying not to rock, but I can't help it. I'm a little upset right now. We got an evil individual in charge of this nation. And we got an evil person running for president too. I'm not saying Donald Trump's a choir boy. But the fundamental vision for this nation is what you're seeing in Charlotte tonight is where we're headed as an entire nation if this don't stop. When you get a person in charge that has no value of human life, no value for the rule of law, no value for our Constitution, and no value for anything else except his own agenda, which is pro-Muslim, pro-communism, pro-socialism, and I could give a list a mile long, and he puts the interest of one race over the other as a slap and a blank you to the white people. You got evil. And that's what's happening. The red silver lining in that cloud, where's my camera at? We got 3 months left of this crap. And as Danny Glover said, we got 3 months left of something else. And if you've watched the Lethal Weapon movies, you know what word I'm wanting to use. 3 months. That's it. But our prayers tonight go out to Charlotte. They really do, because I'm afraid we're looking at another night of violence in that city. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I get on this broadcast tomorrow, clap my hands and say, thank God we had a good night in Charlotte. I don't know. We'll find that out in a few hours, I guess, when the sun goes down. And that's the Mac Files for Thursday afternoon, September the 21st. I wish we had more time, but I don't want to keep you. We'll talk about this more tomorrow. Football Friday coming up tomorrow and some fun. We're going to talk about Batman of all things tomorrow. Adam West turned 88 years old this week. And growing up as a child, I just loved Batman and Robin. I did. I have to admit it, still do. And we're going to talk a little bit about our Batman episodes we love the best. And we're going to talk about some football coming up over this weekend. Clemson and Georgia Tech tonight. Go Jackets! Rooting for you, baby. They play tonight to start off the college weekend, and that's going to be a great game. Patriots and Texans in the NFL on a Thursday night. God bless you today, folks. Keep the faith out there and stay on top of things in this nation. Stay on top of the news and say a prayer for the police officers and the law enforcement communities of our nation. We need them right now. They need them more than you'll ever know. And we salute you out there today from the Mac Files, and our prayers are with you and your family tonight, that God will put his hand of protection over each one of you as you try to do the right thing. And we believe that most of you do. And we've got your back here. And we appreciate every one of you. Good night. Godspeed. God bless America. We'll see you tomorrow on the Mac Files. Have a great night, everybody. Good night.